The Supreme Court listened to hours of oral arguments in the case involving Mississippi's anti-abortion law. That abortion law bans abortion past 15 weeks of pregnancy. And it looks like that the conservative court is poised to gut reproductive rights. Now, we won't know what the official decision in this case will be until June, but you can see, just based on what's being implied by the comments and the questions being asked by the Supreme Court justices, where this decision is headed. Now, again, this is based on my analysis and speculation. You might have a completely different read, but there is cause for concern based on what we're hearing from Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and John Roberts. So Jackson Women's Health Organization, the only abortion clinic in Mississippi, challenged the law and has the support of Democratic President Joe Biden's administration. A ruling is, again, expected by the end of next June. So again, it's gonna be a while until we know what they decide. Now, I do wanna note that there's longstanding precedent upholding reproductive rights in this country, of course, beginning with Roe v. Wade in the 1970s. But then again, in 1992, in the case of Planned Parenthood of Southern Pennsylvania v. Casey, the Supreme Court ruled that any type of law that imposes an undue burden on a woman obtaining an abortion is considered or deemed unconstitutional. And I give you that context because if you can recall some of the testimony or some of the answers that the Supreme Court justices gave as they were being confirmed by the Senate, many of these conservative Supreme Court justices claimed that they believed in upholding precedent, that precedent was incredibly important. Brett Kavanaugh was one of those Supreme Court justices, or one of those nominees who is now a Supreme Court justice. Well, some of the statements coming from Kavanaugh today are concerning, to say the least, and could potentially indicate that he does not really care that much about precedent and would rather have his conservative beliefs override such precedent. Now, conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh voiced a view often expressed by abortion opponents that nothing in the Constitution protects abortion rights. Now, the Constitution grants us a right to privacy, and in Roe v. Wade, the argument by the Supreme Court was that these types of medical decisions, and yes, abortion is a medical decision, should be a private decision, thus allowing the Constitution to protect women's right to choose. But apparently Brett Kavanaugh does not believe in that. He says the Constitution is neither pro-life nor pro-choice on the question of abortion, but leaves the issue to the people of the states or perhaps Congress to resolve in the democratic process. If Roe v. Wade or Roe were overturned, many states would continue to freely allow abortion, Kavanaugh added. Before the Roe ruling, many states, of course, banned abortion. And as we know, there are countless red states that have already made abortion so restrictive that they might as well just ban it. I mean, Texas is an example of that. They've banned abortion past 6 weeks. And think about the specific women, specific families that would be negatively impacted by any given state banning abortion. That would mean that in order to obtain one, they would have to travel out of state to a place like, let's say, California, just to get an abortion. And I would argue that people who are living in poverty, those lower on the socioeconomic ladder, are unlikely to have the resources necessary to do that. And we also live in a country that provides absolutely no support to families who want to have kids or end up having children because they're forced to by the coercion, the threat of the state. This is big government, everyone. This is exactly what big government is. Conservatives who claim that they hate big government are so into big government when it comes to what you're doing in your sex life, what you're doing with your own body. They're all over that. The only time they want small government is when they're talking about regulations for corporations, regulations for banks, those kinds of things. Little government when it comes to the economy, so you can allow corporate interests to run amok, but a lot of government when it comes to your uterus or whatever takes place in your bedroom. That's what the right wing is really about. Now, Justice Sonia Sotomayor made a great point when she says that this case brought before the court was specifically brought before the court because of its rightward shift. Now, this court is incredibly conservative. Of course, you have Donald Trump, who was able to nominate and confirm 3 incredibly conservative Supreme Court justices, and now we're facing the consequences of that. Not only are we gonna deal with rulings on social issues that are incredibly important, we're also gonna have to deal with pro-corporate rulings, which we've already seen by this conservative Supreme Court. But Amy Coney Barrett is also part of this equation, of course, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett said overturning a major precedent is justified, she says, justified in certain instances, but wondered whether public reaction should be considered. Barrett also asked whether the recent abortion in, Barrett also asked whether the recent adoption in some states of safe haven laws, which let women hand over unwanted babies to healthcare facilities without penalty, undermines certain justifications for abortions because women are not forced into motherhood merely by giving birth. Let me just make something clear, okay? Reproductive rights, that's health, that's about a woman's health. Those are health decisions, those are decisions that women should be able to make in private between themselves and their doctor without the state getting involved, okay? So as much as Amy Coney Barrett would love to tell women, like, don't worry about it, homegirl. I mean, we're gonna force you to carry a baby to term for 9 months, but you can just leave your baby at the hospital or something, you're gonna be fine. No, it's not up to Amy Coney Barrett to decide whether it's okay, whether it's gonna be a totally fine situation for a woman to be in that kind of predicament. That decision should be left to the woman who's dealing with the ramifications of carrying a baby to term, and also, by the way, the ramifications of leaving a baby in a safe haven situation. Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with a child, a baby at that point, if they're forced to give birth to that child as a result of these anti-abortion laws, who's now given to the state, and who knows where the kid's gonna end up. I mean, you're really gonna put that on the mother when she could have made a decision in private, made a decision that was right for her, made a decision in regard to her own damn body. But anyway, I mean, yeah, these statements are pretty terrifying. Even though we're not gonna know what the final ruling is gonna be until June, I think that these statements give us a window into what these justices are thinking and what is likely to happen. Conservative Chief Justice, by the way, John Roberts, suggested that the court could uphold Mississippi's law without overturning Roe. He also asked, why is 15 weeks not enough time for a woman to decide to have an abortion? So some might think that that's a totally reasonable question, but we know what the true goal is here. And this has been a long-term project by the right wing in this country that is now coming to fruition. We know that they don't want to just stop at banning abortion past 15 weeks. I mean, we just saw what happened in Texas. They've banned abortion past 6 weeks. The whole point here is to outlaw abortion. If Mississippi knew that Texas would get away with what it got away with, they would have probably banned abortion altogether. Or maybe past 2 weeks, who knows? Who knows what Mississippi would have done if they were informed about what Texas would get away with. But the real point here isn't, I mean, what's reasonable? Maybe it's reasonable to ban abortion past 20 weeks. Maybe it's reasonable to ban it after 15 weeks. No, what's reasonable is to allow a woman who's dealing with the physical and mental ramifications of a pregnancy to make the right decision for herself and her family. That is the right thing to do in a country that purports to be in favor of freedom. That's what happens. And I don't believe for a second that a single conservative in this country is genuinely concerned about the lives of unborn children. Because we just had 1,500 unhoused Americans die on the streets of Los Angeles during the pandemic alone. Just die on the sidewalks. Where are their tears? Where's their orchestrated, organized effort to do something about that? Oh, but they don't, right? They call them bums, they call them losers, they wanna ship them off to the desert somewhere because they care about lives so much. We just saw 4 kids die in a school shooting in Michigan. Where's their orchestrated, organized effort to do something about that? They care about lives, right? No, they care about embryos, they care about zygotes, they care about fetuses, not because they actually care about human lives, but because they love the idea of controlling women. That's what this is about. Controlling and punishing women. Oh, you got pregnant from sexual activity? You're having sex without wanting to reproduce? Shame on you. Shame on you. We're gonna punish you, force you to have that child, and then provide absolutely no support. No support. Once that baby that you were forced to have is born. That's the right-wing ideology. Let's just keep it real, everyone. 777,000, okay? 770,000 Americans died during the coronavirus pandemic. You can't even get conservatives to wear a mask, get a damn vaccine, knowing that it's gonna save people's lives. And then they're running around and telling us what we can and can't do with our bodies, because they supposedly care about human lives. It's complete BS, complete BS. And yeah, I've said it once, I'll say it again. For all the morons who claim that voting doesn't matter, it does matter. We got Donald Trump, who successfully nominated and confirmed 3 of these goons in the Supreme Court. And now it looks like it's likely that they're gonna gut reproductive rights in the country. So congratulations. Why don't you hit up Tulsi Gabbard and see how she feels about that?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.